The genesis of this cafe is the notion that it started as I was looking at the Occupy movement and was asking, how do we expand that? How do we grow? How do we develop that? What are the next steps of that? And how do we as a community have a civic discussion about issues that are important to us? And so we have a 7-week series, and that series is, this series is kind of an experiment where we just kind of want to tweak the thing, get the wrinkles out, hear back from you. On the left-hand side over there, there's a little basket, and it has the word ideas on it. So I'm very much open to any of your ideas of how to make these cafes better. What we're going to do this summer is we're going to paint and redesign in here a little bit, but I'm also thinking about how to structure the conversation. So if you have ideas, that's a wonderful gift you could give me is just let me know what you're thinking about how to make this this better.
Is that microphone on?
Is it? Is it? Okay, I'm just not talking close enough. How's that? Is that better? You know, when you're a preacher, you get so used to the sound of your voice, it doesn't matter if there's a microphone anymore. You just rattle on, rattle on. People have the same glazed over look in their eyes. Please, Lord, make him stop. And then faith comes out of that. He stopped. There is a God. But these 7 weeks have a theme, and the theme is corporate power and its impact on democracy. And these 7 weeks has a direct action theme, and that is that we're promoting initiative I-103. Jeff, I think, will get up in a few minutes and say a few words about that. But none of our speakers are here for that. All of our speakers are independent of the initiative. And our speaker tonight will be Craig Salins, and he is fresh off of, and I want to congratulate you on a wonderful organizing job where you pulled together a bunch of folks, a bunch of citizens in Seattle, brought forward a resolution to our Seattle City Council about Citizens United and limiting its impact on our life. It's a resolution. These are happening across the country, and so Seattle now also has that resolution, which is a great building, and you can talk about that more. It's a great building block. I think of it as a springboard. And it's one of those necessary steps that we have to take in this country if we're going to actually limit corporate power and take back our democracy. And so Craig's done some great work on that, great organizing work in the city. And so when I asked you on May 17th to come, I didn't realize the date would be so close, but so you're fresh off of that victory. And so, it's a victory. Let's give the man some applause. We need to celebrate our victories. Well then, without further ado, the slayer of corporations, Craig Salins.
I don't know. Since they're not really people, I guess it's okay to slay them. Well, first of all, thank you, Reverend Rich Lang, my good friend, and really, you know, for this opportunity and for all of you, you know, coming tonight. It's such a nice day. It's nice to see people willing to be inside anyway. When Rich first asked me to do this a few weeks ago, I asked him if I couldn't have a topic a little broader than, you know, money in politics and saving democracy, but he said no because he didn't want to interrupt future things about, you know, tax reform, war and peace, health care, and all of that. So I'm limited to just saving democracy. I'm sorry. Oh, okay, that was it, yeah. Folks, listen, and so we can flip forward one or two, and do we have real democracy? No? Next slide. Here's what I thought I'd do. You know, and I see a lot of familiar faces tonight, and some that I don't know, but I thought that you know, what we should do, you know, and I'll make some remarks about what's broken, what I think we need to do, talk about where there are further resources, and so forth. And then a little later, when we break up, small groups can talk about whatever, but it occurred to me that it wouldn't hurt if we talk about what we each can do and what we can do together to educate ourselves, our neighbors, our co-workers, figure out how to mobilize and speak up, and also how we can support this movement. So, and that slide will appear a little later in the lineup if I did it right. This is kind of interesting. Some of you might have seen this. You know, Robert Reich, who of course was Secretary of Labor under Clinton and now is the chairperson of Common Cause nationwide, summed this up. And you can read. I don't have to read it to you. Why isn't government working? Because it's been bought off. And then Bill Moyers, of course, until we get clean money and get clean elections, we can kiss goodbye to government as we knew it, as we know it. This is another quote by Robert Reich that I thought was pretty interesting. The unprecedented concentration of income and wealth. Folks, the twin issues, you know, we all know this, the imbalance, the inequality of income and wealth is connected to how government lawmaking has been for sale. We're losing our democracy to plutocracy. So, all right, let me just make some comments on some things. And some of this is really talking to all of us here tonight. You wouldn't be here if you didn't know a lot of these things already. I really wanted to underline some things and suggest what I think we need to do as organizers and as change agents. And a couple of points. In order to really fix anything, we first of all have to know what's broken. And I think in our organizing, being able to pinpoint what is it about our democracy, about lawmaking that's not broken. And I'm going to say a little more about that in a little bit. I think we have to acknowledge that what's happening now, money in politics, is not new. It's been going on for a long time. It's getting worse. Also, getting control of our democracy back in the hands of people instead of money is fundamental to every issue that we care about. I think we all know that and hear that more and more. Many of us, myself included, drifted into this to clean elections and trying to get corporate power out of the way because we were first concerned about other issues. For me, it was single-payer health care. And we asked ourselves the question, why is it that for over 50 years on the floor of the United States Congress there has never been an actual vote on the floor bringing about what we really need in this country, which is health care for all and at an affordable price? Personally, I stumbled across a transcript of a talk that was being given by journalist Bill Moyers in California. This was back in 2006. Where he was traveling up and down California talking about the Clean Elections Program. I had never heard about it, astonishingly. Maybe some of you had or not. I read that transcript and I thought, this is it. Why didn't we know about this? Of course, public financing of campaigns. It's a way to recapture our democracy. Well, we went to work on this, and a lot of you know that clean elections or public financing of campaigns is actually working in about 7 states and a couple of cities. But then, and we got some law passed in Washington State, the local option law, that allows cities and counties now, if they want to establish public financing of campaigns. But as soon as the ink was dry on that bill down in Olympia, here comes the economic crash, followed shortly by even more court decisions in the federal courts that made it impossible for us to really do that. Just a quick side story some of you may know. There was a young gal, I don't know her, but Debbie Simpson was a waitress in Maine, single mom. Used to talk to her customers about civic affairs, and they would say, Debbie, you should run for office. And she thought, oh yeah, what, on my tip money? I don't think so. No, there's this program, it's called the Clean Elections Program. And if you gather 150 signatures from voters in your district, you can get a check from the state, which is enough money to run a competitive campaign. She did it, she ran, she won, she became the chair of the State of Maine Legislature Judiciary Committee, where they were writing law about single moms who'd been on welfare. She was reelected 4 more times until 2010. Citizens United, super PACs, huge amounts of money, they took out Debbie Simpson and a bunch of other folks that had run on clean elections because candidates could still run against them the old-fashioned way. The point, public financing works, but we have got to overturn the court rulings and the laws that have now allowed unlimited funding by super PACs and corporations and so forth. So I just wanted to tell that little story. I think you all know. A couple of the other points, obviously some of the fixes that we've got to support are complex. I don't think it's complex where our friends and neighbors can't understand them, but we need to know that there's a lot of moving parts to what we have to do. I get asked all the time, well, what if we recapture the airwaves? Or what if we just declare that corporations are not people? You know, will any one of these things fix it by itself? Answer, I don't think so. We got to do it all. And we should have, I don't bet on the horses, but, you know, I understand it's a good strategy to you know, bet on every horse. And then, you know, push them all, right? And see which ones are going to win. I think we have to address the question of how do we get some of these changes to happen. We are tackling nothing short of, you know, overturning corporate power in America. I mean, hello. I don't think that'll be accomplished by Saturday. It's going to be a big you know, question and so forth. And here's another thing. Some of you have heard me say this. Okay, Craig, you think we ought to rewrite the Constitution to declare that corporations are not people, money is not speech. We in this room are probably political junkies. Let's face it. It's not fatal, that's just what we are. Many of our good friends and coworkers and neighbors do not get up in the morning and think, gee, today I think I'll work with Reverend Rich Lang and Craig Salins and Frank and everybody on rewriting the Constitution. Instead, they get up and they say, just got laid off on my job, now what? Or my son or my daughter's bill just came in for their tuition, which is going up 16% a year. Or we just moved and now we got a house in Love Canal, Cancer Alley, and so how are we going to survive? It's these daily kitchen table concerns that most people wake up worrying about. War and peace. Do I have to go off to Iraq or Afghanistan, right? I think as organizers, we have to get good at connecting the dots. We've got to talk with folks about how if you care about affordable health care, you have to care about public financing of campaigns, and you have to care about stopping corporate power, because that's standing in the way of getting what we really want in terms of full employment, health care for all, and all that. So it's connect the dots. Prepare for sustained work. Well, enough said. How many of you know about the Powell Memo? 1971, later became U.S. Justice on the Court. Lewis Powell wrote a memo to a friend of his who was then at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, laid out in the Powell Memo a whole strategy of how business and right wing could basically take over think tanks and the media and voter everything, okay? What we are seeing today is the result of that strategy. The point, we've got to be in this in a sustained manner for a long time, and it's going to take some tough nationwide organizing. I think we're up to it, but we would lie to ourselves if we didn't admit that that's what we have to do. And then another point. The only real fix, durable fix to maintaining democracy in America is to have an electorate, voters, people, residents of our country who get civic affairs, who understand it. I think when I graduated from high school, took a course in government, if you could cite the 3 branches of government, you got an A. They never told me in that class that how it really works is some of our good friends down in Olympia who are we all Democrats here? This is not a partisan issue, okay? But, you know, if you're in office and you're in a safe district, you get given a quota. You have to raise a certain amount of money even if you don't need it to get reelected in your district. And the excess gets given to the caucus. And the caucus is under control of the caucus, and then that money is used in swing districts to elect people who might not win otherwise, so that the party can stay in power, so that the party platform maybe can actually be enacted into law. Folks, that's how it works. It's not good, it's not bad, it just is. And this is part of diagnosing how lawmaking happens. Here's another one. You probably didn't know, but Frank is a U.S. Senator. He's going to vote in committee next Tuesday on a little tiny bill that's going to tweak the tax code. He's up for re-election this year in some state. And I'm a lobbyist, and so I go to see him, and all of my clients are really well-heeled, you know, Wall Street. You with me on this? And so I say, hey, Senator Frank, you know, I sure hope that you'll vote to make that little change we talked about on line 32, page 9, you know, of the bill. Because, you know, I know that your voters may not really want you to do it, but nobody's going to notice. You can blame it on the caucus, right? And that'll keep you in office for all the other good stuff. Because, Senator, I'd sure hate for my clients, you know, I like you, but I'd sure hate for my clients on Wall Street to decide that they want to put their money behind somebody else to take you out, right? So thank you for what we think you will be doing next Tuesday in committee where nobody's looking. That's how it works. That's why, even though we have a democracy in this country, ask ourselves this question: how can it be that everybody in America pretty much gets to vote, but the result of that voting and the result of that lawmaking and all is that the top 1/10 of 1% owns 1/3 of the wealth? How can that be? I'll give you a clue. It's not just part of the laws of the universe, okay? This stuff is man-made. And we should be talking to our friends and neighbors about this. This is why we have to recapture our democracy. All right, did I put on there? Advocacy organizations need support. How many of you think we can make real serious change without organizations to do it? I don't see any hands going up. That's, oh, okay. How many think that the 8-hour day could have been brought about without the labor movement, you know, so forth and so on? So if you're able to, we need support in organizations. Okay, the rest of this, Rich, is going to go pretty fast. Listen, I got some new facts just before coming here. I didn't have them when I did the slide. Do any of you know the estimated spending on the presidential election this year? You want to holler it out? Anybody? I've heard numbers like 2.5 to 3 billion, right? Spending by super PACs. Just went to opensecrets.org. To date, $130 million. That's just in 2012 to date. Here's some other interesting things. I didn't want to throw a lot of facts at you. Guess how many lobbyists there are on Capitol Hill right now? 12,655 in 2011. The amount of money that was spent on lobbying last year, all told, anybody know? Oh, you guys, come on, you didn't do your homework. $3.32 billion. Let me tell you something. I didn't know this a while ago. Why public financing of campaigns is essential, but it's not the only fix, is because it is simply the hammer. No, not the hammer. It's a tool standing behind my ability to get Senator Frank's attention, okay? It's the tool that lets us threaten to take him out if he doesn't vote our way. But most of them do vote our way because they don't want to be threatened. So we don't have to use all the money on all of them. We just have to let them know that we will. A bully on the schoolyard only has to beat up one kid. All the rest of them fall in line. Get it? okay? So the other, where lawmaking really happens is behind closed doors, the lobbying and so forth. We all know what happened in 2009 when the health care bill was being debated. And if you track the amount of lobbying cash and lobbyists that were working that year, it goes up by like double or triple from pharmaceuticals and the insurance industry, and then the bill passed, not fully to our liking, but better than nothing, and then it all went back down again, okay? Money buys that influence on Congress. I know none of you knew that. Okay. Listen, this is some interesting stuff. We don't have to spend a long time on it. Hold on a sec. How many of you have heard of this book, Winner Take All Politics? If you have not, I highly recommend it. They pose the question of how can it be that we have a democracy but we don't really have democratic decision making, and the whole rest of the book answers the question in detail. Folks, it is a fascinating book. I highly recommend it. But among the things they point out is that, working on down, the value of control in Congress has gone up and up and up over the years. That's part of the reason why we're seeing more and more money in politics these days. Here's another, look down under campaign costs increasing. A friend said to me the other day, well, Craig, get money out of politics. That's what we're for, right? I said, well, we're really talking about changing the source of money that buys politics. Campaign costs are probably not going to go back down again, even if we wish they would. Consultants these days working for campaigns can do databases right down to the local precinct or the street. They know for a voter what kind of car the voter drives, where they shop, what magazines you subscribe to, how you voted in the last 47 elections and so forth. That kind of crunching the numbers costs money, and if you want to win elections, you got to do it. So that's a cost. Media costs are going up. We already talked about quotas for political parties. Independent electioneering is happening. There's been a huge shift lately from money in campaigns to money around the outside the edges of campaigns. So for all these reasons, this is how money is working its will. And the reason that money is willing to be spent is this. There is a huge return on investment. The money that was spent a couple of years ago to create a tax holiday for corporations, and they spent something like $65 or $70 million lobbying for that tax holiday, that returned billions of dollars. I mean, it was like a 22,000% return on investment. If you want, I'll send you the New York Times story about all that. So the value of the control in Congress has gone up. And there's a supply of money. Okay. This is some of the money that was spent in 2010 by groups making top expenditures. And then here were a couple of other slides. Some of this is on our website, washclean.org. This one is, we posted last year, the year before. It's an excellent, excellent article. You can link to it of how the financial services industry spent over $3.4 billion plus 1.7 and basically got deregulation over a 10-year period of time. These were some of the steps that occurred. So I threw these slides in there because it's just an example of how money is buying influence in Congress. What was the result? Hey, our friend David Stockman, we all know who he is, right? Reagan's budget director, pointed out that in 1985, the net worth reported by the top 5% in this country, $8 trillion, it went up fivefold in 25 years, up to 40 trillion. And some of you have seen some of the charts that show that the top 1/10%, you know, the amount of income they're hauling down and so forth. We already said this. This is laws of men, not laws of the universe, okay? So what's broken? Public policy is for sale, financing government services, tax policies, budget priorities. I think Dwight Eisenhower knew all this stuff, didn't he? Didn't he say something about all this? And again, this is sort of a repeat of some of what I was saying, that how, whoops, how policy is influenced is not just campaigns, it's also election results. It's, media and issue ads and so forth. The very bottom one, voter opinion. How many of you have seen, on voter opinion, how many of you ever catch cable TV or whatever? Have you seen that ad that's being run over and over again by the American Natural Gas Institute? Why are they running ads? They're not up for election. Oh, yes they are. They have laws in the Congress that they want to influence. Here's how to do it. Shape voter opinion. If you can shape voter opinion enough, you don't have to buy a congressman. The voters in his or her district will lean on the congressman, right? Okay. Getting near the end here. So, why do we need a constitutional amendment? And of course, the flip side is, can we really do it? I think you know in this room, but we need to talk with our friends. When the U.S. Supreme Court issues a court ruling like they did in the Citizens United ruling, you know, the one that said that corporations can spend unlimited amounts, they're just like people, Congress can't overturn the court because the court just overturned the Congress. The only way to fix that is literally to have, let me back up. When they issue a ruling based on a constitutional interpretation, which they did, they interpreted First Amendment as applying to corporations, the only way to fix that is to literally write different language into the Constitution. That's why, if we want to overturn the Citizens United decision, we're going to have to support a constitutional amendment, no matter how long it takes. A lot of us have thought, I used to think, geez, how often do you amend the Constitution, right? Kind of a steep hill to climb. It is a steep hill to climb. We have to climb it. Because that's the only way to stop the courts, the federal courts, from continuing to issue rulings that get in the way of what we really need, which is public financing of campaigns and control of the airwaves and a lot more. It may take 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Along the way, we'll probably get, collateral good things happening, like consolation prizes and so forth and so on. What is interesting is pressure is building nationwide. And last Monday, Seattle added its voice. Good. There are now dozens and dozens, thank you, Jeff. But by the way, it was many of us who worked on that, and thank you all who helped to get that through the Seattle City Council. There are now dozens and dozens of cities and some counties and 3 state legislatures that have enacted resolutions calling on the Congress to get about amending the Constitution. When a legislature does it, it's really significant because that signals the Congress that if and when a constitutional amendment is proposed, that those legislatures are poised to actually ratify it, right? That's why we're on a glide path in this state to get our state legislature next January to adopt a joint memorial resolution saying the same thing as did Hawaii, New Mexico, and recently Vermont. So to amend the Constitution and reset the court. By the way, here's another thing you may or may not know. The court messed around with the Clean Elections program. In Arizona and most states, they had a feature of clean elections called rescue funds. Okay? You're running on public financing. You get outspent by a private candidate. Once that private candidate spends more than you got in your check to run your program, dollar for dollar, you get more money to keep up with them. You follow me? That's called rescue funds. It's capped at like 2 or 3 times the, what you got before. The U.S. Supreme Court stepped into Arizona last year in the middle of an election. Candidates were running and had money in their campaigns and ruled rescue funds out of order. Actually, it was a local federal judge overturned by the Ninth Circuit. The Ninth Circuit was overturned by the U.S. Supreme Court, getting rid of rescue funds. That's why we have to reset the court. And I don't think it's going to happen in the same way that, that fictional, in case I'm on tape here, in the Pelican Brief, the movie and the... Gosh, did he really say that? So the only durable fix is a constitutional amendment. Okay, sort of wrapping up. We need fair elections now, public financing. We need laws that can regulate spending outside of campaigns, electioneering. We need tough disclosure laws. Let me tell you something. The U.S. Congress could pass a Disclose Act now. The Supreme Court did not rule against disclosure. They said disclosure is possible, but in both the House and the Senate, there's not been appetite to actually pass a Disclose Act yet. So money. We need to push for that. We need to recapture airwaves. We need to do some of this at the local and the state level. So, hey, I stuck this in here. You all remember, I'm sure we were all alive when FDR... If you have not done it, Google FDR's second Bill of Rights and read it. Folks, it is stunning when we think back what FDR had the guts to do, right after his last inaugural. He called the reporters into his office. Maybe it's not ending capitalism, monopoly capitalism in America, but that document, if that were to become the law and the policy of the land, we'd be far ahead, because it calls for full employment, housing for all, affordable health care, so forth and so on. It's really a great thing. So, Rich, I thought, and to all of us, these could be some questions that we discussed tonight. I'm not sure there's any one answer to this, but here's some questions. Which of these are core problems? Which of them are solutions that would fix everything? Ending corporate personhood, regulating campaign spending. Just on those two, the proposals that have been filed already in Congress, there are 13 of them, proposals, amendments to the Constitution that have been proposed in the Congress in the last 3 or 4 months. There's actually a summary of them on our Wash Clean website. Some of them go directly at corporate personhood. Some of them go at regulating money. Some do both. Kucinich has a proposed amendment that calls for mandatory public financing of all federal campaigns and makes it illegal to not take public financing. That's Dennis Kucinich's proposal, right? So there's a bunch of them. I think what is significant about that is the fact that those proposals have been filed at all. Because 6 or 8 months ago, none of them had been filed. Actually, one was, but the others not. Yeah. The most recent was, what year was it? It was to lower the voting age nationwide to 18. And of course, that was motivated by Vietnam War and body bags, which I think makes the point that the Constitution can be changed, and when that happens, it's because there's a tsunami of public opinion behind it. And so that was in 1971, I believe, or somebody may know, it was early 70s. Anyway, I think that ending corporate personhood alone won't fix everything. We had a problem with money in politics even before the Citizens United decision. But we also have had a problem with corporate power for a long time, okay? And if you notice, this guy in Las Vegas who gave $5 million to, a bunch of times to Gingrich, okay? He wasn't a corporation, he was just a rich guy. So we also have to attack money you know, undue money in politics. That's kind of it. I'd be glad to answer questions later, or yeah. So
yeah.
Thank you very much. Oh, okay. Yeah. So the question, what we are actually doing right now, all of us advocates, is getting cities and then counties and hopefully state legislators to adopt a resolution calling for the overturn of Citizens United, or in the case of legislators, to essentially pledge their support to vote for that next year. So that was the resolution that was passed by the City Council this last Monday. And we're going to be asking the County Council to take up that resolution real soon. At the same time, we are asking legislators to sign what we call a joint legislative letter. It's a little letter. It's basically that same resolution. And I'm real pleased to announce that to date, we have 52 legislators that have signed that joint legislative letter. And some of them have not even been, some of them who have not signed yet have not yet been asked. They didn't know of it. Yeah, thank you, right. So to basically urge the Congress, to urge the Congress to propose a constitutional amendment which would then come back to the states for ratification, which in effect would overturn the Citizens United decision. Yeah, and I might just add one other quick thing. I think many of us know that the level of alarm and anger among voters on this issue of money in politics, of undue influence by money in politics, that pressure is building. That pressure is really building. A friend that said the other day to me, it's like people are starting to sharpen their political pitchforks. I think that by this November, many voters all across this country are going to be so disgusted at the amount of money that has been flying around to influence elections that the day after the November's election, they are going to be clamoring for the Congress and the state legislatures to do something about it. If so, we need to be poised with some answers to that so that we capture that momentum. Here's what I find a lot of them don't, and so I say Citizens United, they say, well, isn't that a good thing, you know, United Citizens? And then I say, no, it was the Supreme Court's decision that let corporations spend unlimited fund. And then they often say to me, oh, yeah, of course, that. There has been some nationwide polling on that which says that between 75 and 80% of those polled disagree with that decision. Now, they're not lawyers, but they disagree with the decision. So there you go. Great question. And two parallel answers. One is, I think we have to change it through language somehow in a constitutional amendment. Otherwise, the court will keep ruling that way. And secondly, is it's not going to be easy. I think the drafting of a final proposed constitutional amendment, if and when it gets that far, whenever we get to that, is going to be a huge nationwide fight and debate in the Congress, as it probably should be. So it won't be easy. What I think that we all around here and nationwide need to do this spring and summer and fall is say to our legislators and to candidates running for office and to those that are running for office, look, money in politics has just gotten out of hand. And no matter what, please don't do nothing about it. Please know that this is a big issue. I think we need to push this issue onto the front burner of this year's elections, because at least then we will start to have more and more conversation about it, and some of the debate over the language of an eventual amendment. But the short answer to the question, you know, that you asked is, I think the Constitution has to say something like, you know, undue influence of money in elections is just, can't do it. Can I just add one thing? I've got a lot of friends in the ACLU. I've been an ACLU member. Some of you may know that the National ACLU came out in support of how the Citizens United ruling was decided, because they felt that First Amendment rights to speech don't even begin to go down the slippery slope of, you know, denying that. So I don't know if that fully, yeah, exactly. So you might want to take, all of you, you may want to take a look at the proposals that have been filed already. If you go to washclean.org and then you go to the resources and downloads page, there is a, and that's linked from the home page. There's a 7-page summary where we literally have printed all 13 of the proposals that have been filed so far in Congress. Not just a, I mean, when I say a summary of them, we've printed what the proposals are. They're all short. Let me just stick in one other thing about that. The federal courts have ruled consistently over many, many years. There's a concept, I'm not a lawyer, but there's a concept called compelling state interest. If something is deemed to be compelling state interest, that allows the courts to say that trumps some other law. So here's what they've said. It is a compelling state interest for any law that prevents corruption or the appearance of corruption. So when the McCain-Feingold law was passed, which limited spending and all of that, the court said, okay, they gave a green light to that because they said it prevents corruption and or the appearance of corruption. Here's what they have not ruled in favor of: leveling the financial playing field. The courts have said leveling the financial playing field is not a compelling state interest. So that was the basis in which they knocked down the rescue funds feature. They said rescue funds may be a good idea, but it's not a compelling state interest. And so they knocked that down. Now, maybe financial level playing field doesn't matter so much if you're, you know, Norway or Denmark or somewhere where nobody makes that much more money than anybody else. But when we get this huge tilt between wealth and poverty in this country, then a level financial playing field starts to be a real issue. That's why I bring it up. Yeah. But you know, folks, this is an unusual year. I think we all know it. Not only because it's every 4 years a presidential election year and a lot of people are on the ballot, but boy, I don't remember an election in my lifetime where the issues of wealth and poverty, money in politics, corporate self-interest, all this stuff has been so on the front burner. Did you all think that? And so I think I would be embarrassed to be running for office this year if I did not have a position on some of those things. And I think that we should be, I think the way to create political wind for change, to create that political wind, is for us to show up at candidate appearances and so forth and ask them, say, hey, candidate, senator, you know, what's your position on, or just what do you think about, you know, the influence of money in lawmaking? Here's why it makes a difference. We've got 50 million people in this country that have not had health care. We've got people that can't find a job, not because they're lazy, but because there are not enough jobs. We've got budgets being cut and teachers laid off. So what sentence, I don't want to get on. You all know this, you know. Okay, we've got 20% unemployed, and we've got a bunch of work that needs doing, and we can't figure out how to put the unemployed to work doing the work. You know, last time I checked, we want to have a country that creates a job for everybody and, you know, basic housing and health care. So, and like I said earlier, these are, you know, connected to money and politics. So I think it's a legitimate question to ask candidates. I see a lot of hands. I'm not sure. And, you know, just to, folks, I want to tell you, building sort of on your comment or your question, this is sort of the notion that a river is made up of a bunch of streams, if you know where I'm going with this. Or, spit it out, Craig. There are a number of different constituencies in the state that I end up working with and talking to because it's my temporary job working with Wash Clean. Some of them really want to deal only with corporate personhood. Some of them don't want to deal with corporate personhood at all, but they do want to overturn Citizens United. Others are ACLU and all that. My political views or how I handle that is, look, I don't think we know for sure what the viewpoint of the country will be by November or December, because it is changing. So a couple things. Let's agree to just pay attention and see where things are going a little bit. But if there are several groups that agree, I'm going to use an analogy here, to ride the same bus up to 85th, knowing that when you get to 85th, some are going to go left and some are going to go straight and some are going to go right, and that's okay. We don't have to agree what we're going to do after 85th. Let's just ride the bus together for now. So what I say to move to amend, and to some of the ACLU folks, and to the Free Speech for People folks, and some of the Tea Party, and some of the Republicans, and some of the Democrats, is if we can at least agree on this piece of this advocacy, do you follow me on this? Let's ride that bus together. Because if we argue amongst, you're not saying this, but if I'm just telling you it's out there, okay? If we let those of us who mostly agree with each other focus on the 2 or 3% where we don't agree, who wins are the forces that we all disagree with. Yeah. Yeah, so I think the short answer to that question for now is there is undue influence going on, and it's pretty bad, and it's standing in the way of lawmaking that would benefit the vast majority of Main Street America. So let's, no matter what, let's at least address that issue. That's probably what it is. And I'm sensing the music beginning to play.
Actually, and it's a great, actually, let's give Craig a little love here. So. Yeah, Craig can, you know, like I said last week, the lights stay on till 9. Craig will be here. Wanted Jeff to wrap us up on a direct action and a wonderful springboard because, again, in partnership, working together, there's a resolution that the Seattle City Council has passed. And what Jeff and I have been working on, and others are now working on, this Initiative 103, is actually about legislating law. So what the City Council just made a resolution. What we're trying to push is, okay, let's make that Seattle law, which gives it a little more binding arbitration. So it's a little nuance, and I'll have Jeff just talk about that just for a few minutes, and then we'll just chat together, and Craig will be here as well.
Thanks, Rich, and thanks everyone for staying. I think next time Craig has a rally to get the City Council to do something, we should have him speak before. So sorry about the timing this time. I'm not a constitutional scholar, but I've been studying this lately. And just so those of you that don't know me, I'm Jeff Reifman. I'm co-organizing Initiative 103 with Rich. So today is actually, May 17th, is the anniversary for Brown versus the Board of Education. It's the Supreme Court decision that outlawed segregation, which in 1954 reversed Plessy versus Ferguson of 1896. And it's an example to remind us that the Supreme Court often reverses itself over time. So a lot of people come up to me and say, oh, well, we'll pass Initiative 103 and it'll overturn Citizens United for like a week before someone will file a suit and the Supreme Court will just squash us. So I've been doing research about this, and it's kind of interesting. When we look at Brown versus Board of Education, basically what the court ruled is that segregation violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, and they said that separate facilities are inherently unequal. And it's actually the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment that corporations use to gain personhood. So it's pretty disgusting that the whole basis of corporate personhood, corporate speech, and the accumulation of corporate power through the Supreme Court has been based on the hard-fought work of abolitionists who were fighting to free slaves. So something that was meant to be a civil rights victory has been turned to oppress all of us through corporate power. And I just want to outline for you, this is just a quick summary of how corporations have gained human rights through the Supreme Court. And there's a model brief that the Community Environmental Legal Defense Fund has written, and I'll be publishing this with links if you want to look into it more. But basically, in 1819, in Dartmouth College versus Woodward, the court granted that the Contracts Clause provided protections to corporations. In 1886, the case you've probably heard of, Santa Clara County versus the Southern Pacific Railroad Company, that granted constitutional rights to corporations because they were persons, basically found them as persons. And then in 1889, Minneapolis and St. Louis Railroad Company versus Beckwith, the corporations received due process protections. Noble versus Union River Logging in 1893, the court grants corporations Fifth Amendment protections against double jeopardy. 1906, Hale versus Henkel, the court grants corporations Fourth Amendment protections from unreasonable search and seizure. And this is important because our regulatory system is used, sometimes the government is asking corporations for information about how are these drugs you're leaking out into the environment showing up in the water supply, and the corporations are saying, oh, well, we can't tell you that. 1978, First National Bank of Boston versus Bellotti grants for the first time First Amendment rights to corporations, and of course this is expanded upon by Citizens United. So that's how corporations have expanded these rights. Now I want to tell you something hopeful, because people are always telling me, well, Initiative 103 will just get quashed. But have you heard of the Lochner Era? This is an era from 1897 to 1937 where the court routinely quashed the attempts of the state and federal government to establish labor rules, minimum wage requirements. And it went on for 40 years. The court was basically supporting the Industrial Revolution. And it was actually a Washington minimum wage law, Washington state law, that was challenged by a chambermaid at a hotel in Wenatchee, where, and I love this, gotta love Wikipedia, she was paid, well, she was supposed to be paid under the minimum wage law $14.50 for a week of work, and a week consisted of 48 hours at the time. And she wasn't being paid that, so she went to court. And ultimately, it made its way all the way up to the Supreme Court. And in the case West Coast Hotel versus Parrish, Parrish was the chambermaid. The court sided for the first time ending the Lochner Era and establishing a foundation for minimum wage laws. And so that happened here in Washington State. And that's a very hopeful example that if we pass Initiative 103 in Seattle and say that corporations are not persons, and that they don't have rights to speech and spending money in elections, and that they don't have rights to lobby in private, that we could be actually the springboard to a foundation of stripping and pulling back this expansion of these bizarre personhood rights and these constitutional rights for corporations. So on that note, around some of your chairs there are some blank petitions. If each of you, if a couple of you could pass those out, I have more if you need. If each of you would want to take one home and bring it back to the church at some point, either to another cafe or you can just drop it off here, we would appreciate that. Over the next, there's a guy, Fred Miller here, who's been volunteering with us. Fred got me on the bandwagon that we're going to qualify Initiative 103 in time to be on the November ballot. So how many of you would like to see Initiative 103 on the ballot in November? That's a lot of you. So really June, early July. There's some flexibility depending on how supportive the city council is, because they have 45 days to turn it over to King County elections. So basically over the next 12 days with the street fair and folklife, I want to collect 10,000 signatures. And so we have a variety of volunteers who are getting out into the street with us to gather signatures, and I'd like to invite all of you to either come out for an hour or 2 hours, join us or ask some friends of yours to join us and see if we can hit this 10,000 signature milestone. And in 2 weeks, we'll tell you how we did. If we don't hit that milestone, we have till September to qualify, but we wouldn't be on a ballot until next year. So it's not a huge deal, but if we want to, like Craig said, there's all this momentum building for November. We'd like to be a part of that. So we need your help. This is not going to happen without each of you going home and getting a couple people to participate. So if you go to the I-103 website, there's a big volunteer button. It's just a really simple form. You just give us your name and contact info, and we'll get in touch with you. Yeah? No, but it's a big milestone for us going into June that I'd like to hit. So, and if we can't do that in the next 12 days, then I don't think we'll be able to qualify in time for November. We'll qualify after, I think. So.
It could be way below 10,000 and still make it because you get a whole lot more toward the end of the campaign.
So from 20,600 valid signatures. So. Valid means that the King County elections actually checks every signature or a sample of the signatures to make sure that they're registered voters in the city of Seattle. And so, awesome. So,
I'm frustrated because if I took this to school, I could get 10,000 like that.
well,
But none of them are registered in Seattle. They're all foreign exchange students.
So anyway, it's getting late. I just thank you for your time, and I'll be around if you have more questions. And I would love, if you have questions about gathering signatures with us, love to see you out there.
Thank you all for coming. John Talton will be with us next week.